Hello, Amador County. I'm Tom Slivick. Welcome to TSPN's News for today. Let's take a look at our headlines. Jackson, Rancheria, Casino Resort, and American Legion Post 108 gave $20,000 to the Wounded Warrior Project. The Amador Water Agency Board discusses system-wide water rate structure. Ione Council directs staff to continue adhering to Brown Act despite suspension by the recent State Budget Act. Electrical storm zaps upcountry water systems computers. And in the second half of the news, I'll speak with Jackson City Manager Mike Daly for an update on the AWA Outreach Committee meeting held Tuesday afternoon at Jackson Civic Center. Stay with us. I'll have these stories when I return from the other side of the break. You're watching Amador County's local television network, TSPN. And welcome back. Proceeds from the May Top Cop Challenge were officially donated to the Wounded Warrior Project Tuesday morning in a brief ceremony at the Veterans Wall at the Legion Campground in Martell. Jackson Rancheria Tribal Chairman Bo Marks and American Legion Ambulance President Al Lennox presented a ceremonial check to the Wounded Warriors Project in memory of a local resident who is a great supporter of the program. The check for $17,211 was proceeds from the Top Cop Challenge held May 19th at the Jackson Rancheria. The donation was rounded out to $20,000 with a donation by the American Legion and will go to the Wounded Warrior Project, which provides programs and services to severely injured military service members during the time between active duty and transition to civilian life. The Wounded Warriors Project is structured to nurture the mind and the body and encourage economic empowerment and engagement. Joe Derricks of Gold Country Firearms said the first annual Top Cop Challenge was a success, and the Jackson Rancheria Casino Resort and American Legion Ambulance have already signed on to support the next challenge competition, tentatively set for September 14th in 2013. Derrick said the fundraiser is a singles and a two-person team marksmanship contest for law enforcement personnel, and the proceeds of the first competition were donated to the Wounded Warrior Project in the name of Mac McLean, who passed away at the age of 29. McLean was an avid supporter of the Wounded Warrior Project and told his parents that if anything ever happened to him, he would want people, instead of giving flowers, to donate to the project. And Derricks has known McLean and his parents, Steve and Karen, for years and made this donation in Mark's McLean's memory. Steve and Karen also attended the ceremony Tuesday at the Warriors Wall on the grounds of the American Legion Hall in Martell, and the funds came from entry fees, donations, and the awards banquet. Derrick said $10,000 in donations came in for raffle prizes and prizes for the Top Cop Challenge, including some celebrities. Those included gifts from Gary Sinise and former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee, former President George W. Bush, Larry the Cable Guy, and Jeff Foxworthy. The challenge was hosted by Gold Country Firearms and sponsored by Jackson Rancheria Casino Resort and American Legion Post 108. And Derrick said the idea was born from a partnership he forged with the Rancheria when they began letting him teach firearms instruction at the Tribal Police Gun Range at the Rancheria. Top Cop Challenge Individual Competition Awards was Joe Alvarez of the Jackson Police Department. Second place went to Brian Bella of the El Dorado County Sheriff's Department. Scott Goebel and Steve Kent of the El Dorado Sheriff's Department won the team competition, and John Kent and Bob Polk of Jackson Rancheria Tribal Security took second place. The Amador Water Agency Board of Directors discussed a system-wide water rate structure and related Proposition 218 notice in a special meeting Monday, August 13th, and plan to discuss the expected water costs on Tuesday in an outreach committee meeting with Jackson City Council. Directors discussed the proposal with consultant Bob Reed of the Reed Group, who said some costs of the consolidated rate structure would not be known yet, but his estimates for certain costs for water in the 5 water systems had dropped significantly with the insertion of participation fees from JTS communities, of which he said 87.5% could be put toward the components of debt service costs for the Amador transmission pipeline and towards buy-in for services. Reed said $250,000 a year from JTS will offset debt service costs for the already built Amador transmission pipeline. He said that represents a pretty significant increase, up from $33,000, and makes the water rates less than they were in previous proposals. He said the typical Amador water system customer's rate would go up 14 cents a month It would also change debt service charges that were delineated per water system, and the rate structure would be formed by an election across the county of water agency customers on a community facilities district, and will require a 2/3 majority vote and also a Proposition 218 notice for allowing protests of the expected rate increase. The CFD would assess the special tax for the gravity supply line project and would depend on the boundaries of the CFD, which would omit parcels on wells. Reed said resale water rate increase estimates showed in Jackson that the rates would go up 9.5% in consolidated rate structure. Plymouth would go down a little, Drytown would go up by 16.5%, and Mule Creek State Prison would go up by 11.5%. Wendell Pert suggested that the availability of the water for firefighting be considered, and Reed said the fire flow was not about home use of water. Reed said debt service charges per system were different, and the CFD for the gravity supply line would reduce bills in the Central Amador Water Project service area. AWA Attorney Steve Cronick said staff is proposing system-wide rate structure and annual adjustments tied to an index, and the board could choose not to implement that adjustment over a 5-year term. Ken Berry asked if the rate could be based on actual spending, and Cronick said the Proposition 218 notification, which is in process, will say that in no case shall the adjustment exceed the cost of providing service. Ione City Council last week directed staff to adhere to long-standing Brown Act requirements despite partial suspension of the act in the 2012 Budget Act. City Manager Edwin Pattison said the city submits Brown Act-related reimbursement costs to the state quarterly and has been reimbursed several $1,000s over the last 2 years. City Attorney James Maynard in an August 3rd report said the California legislature suspended the Brown Act with the passage of Assembly Bill 1464, the Budget Act of 2010. Maynard said the League of California Cities Brown Act Committee convened to review and discuss the suspension of portions of the Brown Act and recommended that cities continue to comply with all requirements of the now suspended provisions of the Brown Act. Maynard also reviewed the Budget Act and concurred with the Brown Act Committee's analysis and recommendation. Maynard said AB 1464, signed into law on June 27, contains a schedule of state mandates that are suspended during the 2012-2013 budget year. Further, the Brown Act was included in SB 1006, enacted June 27th, which extended suspension of the provisions of the Brown Act to last 3 fiscal years. The suspension extends to 5 provisions of the Brown Act, including preparation and posting at least 72 hours before a regular meeting of the agenda that contains a brief general description of each item of business to be transacted or discussed at the meeting. It also suspends a provision requiring inclusion of the agenda of a brief general description of all items to be discussed in closed session and disclosure of each item to be discussed in closed session in an open meeting prior to any closed session. It also suspended the report in open session prior to adjournment on the actions and votes taken in closed sessions regarding certain subject matters and the requirements to provide copies to the public of certain closed sessions documents. Maynard said AB 1464 refers to 2 prior decisions of the Commission on state mandates in which the Commission determined that these requirements of the Brown Act impose reimbursable mandates on local governments by referencing the Commission's decision. The legislature intended to suspend only the requirements as mentioned. The remainder of the Brown Act therefore remains in effect, and meetings of local legislative bodies must generally continue to be open and public. The Brown Act requirements were suspended in 1990, at which time most cities reported they would continue to comply with all requirements of the Brown Act regardless of the suspension, Maynard said. And the suspended provisions are central to the Act, he said, and noncompliance of those provisions would unquestionably degrade transparency. Further, notwithstanding a lack of legal consequences, noncompliance could provoke a hostile reaction from the public and could suggest inaccurately that the city opposes open. The Amador Water Agency announced that electrical storm in July destroyed computer controls throughout the upcountry water system, causing at least $5,000 in equipment damage and staff overtime costs. AWA General Manager Gene Mancebo said Tuesday that the AWA staff was forced to manually operate pumps and tanks for up to 3 days in several locations after power surges damaged the communication systems that tell pumps when and where to send water to upcountry areas. At about 11 p.m. on Saturday, July 14th, lightning damage shut down the Tiger Creek and Silver Lake Pines pump stations that lift water from the McCollum River to the Buckhorn Water Treatment Plant that provides drinking water to upcountry homes. Mancebo said at the same time the Buckhorn Water Treatment Plant shut down when a transducer stopped working due to nearby lightning. AWA technicians worked until the early morning hours to bypass broken equipment and get the water treatment plant back online before upcountry water storage tanks dropped to dangerously low levels. Mancebo said the storm also damaged controls on a tank on Trent Way that supplies water to the Jackson Rancheria Casino, and area homes on the well that serves the Lamell Heights subdivision, and an electronic water meter at Mace Meadow Fairway Pines lift station. Dozens of times each year, electrical problems, wildfires, and power outages cause potential interruptions of upcountry water service because of electricity powers the water pumps. And Mancebo said the water agency encouraged local residents to be prepared for possible water outages by keeping a supply of drinking water on hand, and residents are also asked to follow neighborhood signs and announcements that may ask them to conserve water due to an electrical outage or mechanical failure. The lightning storm also started 16 fires in Amador and El Dorado counties. Cal Fire Chief Unit Kelly Keenan reported late July that most of the fires in Amador County are out. And stay with us. When we come back, we'll have our interview on TSPN's News. You're watching Amador County's #1 news and sports leader,